Normally, when it comes to reading in class, I choose more than one text because the students are at different levels. But this assignment clearly states choose one text and show us how you will work with it. So here's my reading a text in class. I will start this presentation by just briefly introducing myself. I will point out some problems I saw with the task and present some literature on the subject, why read. I will also show you some challenges that I have come to recognize when teaching English, teaching reading, getting children to read English. I will show you the books from the syllabus I did not use. I will show you the book I actually did use, how I will work with it, and why I chose that exact book. I will point out the competence competence aims and learning goals before I reveal my sources at the end. I am a 44-year-old man living and teaching in Bodø. I work at Bodø's largest school where I teach 9th grade. Although the size of the classes at this school normally range from 22 to 27 pupils, I only have 15 on account of one of them being hearing impaired. I have 17 years of teaching experience. Now, the problems that I see with using just one text is that the students are never at one level. There's never one level in a class. In my class, they will, if I'm using the Common European Framework for of Reference for Languages, CFR, I reckon my students' skills range from A2 to borderline C1, the very best borderline C1. So why read it all? Collier and Slater states about language enrichment. Students gain familiarity with many features of the written language, the formation and function of sentences, the variety of possible structures, the different ways of connecting ideas which broaden their own writing skills. So there are numerous more reasons than that, but that in itself should do it. The reason I have chosen to include Day and Baffert's three of Day and Baffert's top 10 principles of extensive reading is to underline the fact that maybe this task is more difficult than it seems because of the different levels of the students. The first one says that it has to be easy, at least 98% known words. Impossible in a class. Learners choose what they want to read. That's not the case in this task. They are given a text. I have to choose wisely, don't I? And of course, that learners read as much as possible. That applies here. I have to choose a good story, a good text that makes them want to read, keep on reading. The challenges I face as an English teacher trying to get students to read is that almost all the good books I know about are made into movies almost before the ink is dry. So that's the case with Twilight, The Hunger Games, Wonder, all of which are books I have used in my teaching to get students to read. Now, in most of the cases, they have watched the movies, so I can't get them to read the books. They don't want to. So why not use books from the syllabus? I've read them all, but in the case of The Hate You Give, I really don't want my students to write the way that book is written. Although I find it important in a cultural and somewhat historical sense, it's nothing I would have my students read because of the way it's written. There are prepositions missing, there are sometimes verbs missing, and so on and so forth. So yes, probably will watch the movie with my students, but not have them read the book. My life as an alphabet, one of my students has a family member with autism, and there have been experts, there have been other family members to talk about it, to explain what is autism and so on. So I feel that's enough with that. There will be too much focus on this one student with a family member. Born a Crime is a very good book, but it's too long for the less advanced students. It jumps back and forth in time. It's probably difficult for some to keep up, but definitely use excerpts from it because of the importance from a historical and cultural point of view. All the Bright Places, I have already recommended that to my more advanced students because it's just a great book, and they have started reading it. I present to you The Giver by Lois Lowry. You may not have heard about it, but you definitely will have seen some of its byproducts. You can find this storyline somewhat familiar to The Maze Runner, to The Hunger Games, and not least The Handmaid's Tale. The students almost always respond to this book, and I've used it with success and will continue to do so. So why this particular book? What's so special about it, you may ask? Well, first of all, the language is pretty easy. It's not difficult for the less advanced students to follow the storyline here. And the chapters are short and the letters are rather large, so it's not much of an effort to get through each page, not to say the chapters. The story is compelling, they think it's exciting, and they speculate when we have discussions later on. I will get back to that later. And the stronger students can draw parallels to modern society with authoritarian dictatorships and so on. So there is a little bit for everyone here. So how do I see us working with this book in class? First of all, silent periods of reading, where each student, undisturbed, can read at his or her own pace. Use their computer to access one of the many online dictionaries that are accessible to Norwegian students. I will make sure that no one skips ahead. There will be weekly goals where at the end of a week each student should have read through this page or that chapter, and those who haven't been able to do that will get to take their book home and catch up during the weekend. At the start of each week we will discuss the progress, what has happened in the book, what do you think will happen next, and my experience is that this is actually quite a good task because everybody has an opinion about what will happen next, even though many times it's pretty far-fetched. At the end, a book report will be presented, either oral or written. Those who choose oral will be subjected to questions from the audience, not the type that will check if they actually have read the book, but to see if they can reflect upon some of the contents. Also, there will be requirements handed out to those who choose to hand in a written book report. There are some competence aims from LK06 I could have tied this to, but the assignment said 2 to 3. So I chose these two. Comment on own work in learning English. Understand and use a general vocabulary related to different topics. Both of these go directly to the way I have outlined how to work with this book. So what do I want my students to take with them from this exercise of reading this book? First of all, I want to show them that books aren't enemies. It can be quite rewarding to read. It can be relaxing to read. Maybe some of them will actually seek out books and read them after doing this. Also to broaden their vocabulary. If some of the less advanced students, the A2 students, learn 10 new words reading this, that will be fantastic. Fine-tuned grammar really applies more to the B2, C1 students, but grammatical practice for the less advanced students. Those are my learning goals. These are my sources. Thank you for listening.